You probably have many personal character flaws.
Actually, I watched Destiny for a while, and so that made
There
me
you go.
perfect.
So you have a huge character
Yeah.
flaw. Hello, Rome, Egypt. Can you hear me?
Hello, good sir. I can indeed hear you.
All right. Thanks for calling in, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. I've got some. So I should preface. I'm kind of a reluctant Trump voter.
Okay.
I much would prefer Vance or Vivek or Ron DeSantis.
Me too.
um, um, I'm not super hardcore right wing. Like, for example, me and my dad both supported Romney, including when he was running against Trump the first time. I
With his
do think
binders of
Romney-
women and
Come on, we both know that was bullshit.
I know.
But yeah. So I'm more concerned right now with and this hasn't started promoting him yet, but he has the way he speaks and exaggerates it, and it starts coming off his lies, right? Like the amount of times that he says we have the greatest economy under Trump, which I mean it was a good economy, but it's not true that it was the greatest, right? He just exaggerates everything. Like how am I supposed to defend this to people? To point out like Trump has no character. Like my dad, for example, will not vote for Trump now. He's not leftist. He's like right-wing libertarian, but he won't vote for Trump because he perceives him as having no moral character, and he thinks that that's the most important thing a candidate has.
Well,
So
first,
like I don't know how to defend this anymore
Sure,
because
sure.
it's just so egregious at this point.
so a couple things to say. First off, it is not a referendum on a specific person's moral character. The first thing you have
I'm
to understand,
aware, yes, that's what I believe.
it is a unless you have good reason to vote third party, it is choosing one or the other, right? And so with I hate to do this, but the same could be said if I'm talking to a Harris voter. It's like, listen, one of the arguments you could make is, even if you could point out to a lot of flaws in Harris, is she better than Trump? Right? The same is true of Trump. So if moral character is sort of one of the reasons that you will pull the trigger on who you vote for, you're not comparing Trump's moral character to your own or to your neighbors or to your pastor. You're comparing his moral character to the moral character of Kamala Harris and the DNC. And I think in that world, even with the flaws that you could have of Trump lying or, allegedly Trump cheated on his wife, that's very immoral. I take marriage very seriously. I think that's not a good thing whatsoever. When you stack those two up, how does that line up to the lies of Kamala Harris? How does that stack up to sort of the weaponization of race, the attacking Joe Biden for being against busing and then all of a sudden supporting it, the complete 180 on the bulk of her positions? When it comes to those moral issues, for example, you tell me if you think this is correct. One of the most central attacks from Kamala Harris' team against Donald Trump is Project 2025, right?
Yeah,
They know that's a lie. They know it.
they do, but
They know
so
Trump's denounced it. They know that
that's
the
what
founders
Trump
of
says. But my dad is like, well, Trump's a liar, and look at all these people that were in Trump's cabinet that helped with 2025. You really think that Trump's not involved in this?
Yes, right? Because there's different types of lies, right? So, for example, Trump lies like a car salesman lies, right? Like you go to get a car and they're like, this is the greatest car you'll ever own. I've never seen more comfortable seats than this car. Oh my goodness, this car will last you for 10 years. Now, the truth is, they might be selling you a lemon, in which case it's very immoral. But it might just be a good car that they're exaggerating. Or the guy, we just had a parade in the town I'm from, the little town. They have a festival, and there's, you got just like a carnival. You got these people, oh, we got the best pizza here. There's the best pizza. Is it the best? Or are you just, bullshitting me? Those are the sort of lies Trump tells. There was this journalist that worked, I'm from the Pennsylvania area, so I'm about an hour and a half outside of Pittsburgh. I think she worked for KDKA, which is a news outlet here in Pittsburgh. And I remember she said in like 2018, which stuck with me, she said, the thing about Trump is Trump supporters don't take what he says as literally true. They take what he's saying as directionally true. But Trump's opponents don't look at the directional, they take the literal. And that's where such a dichotomy exists. So Trump will say things like, this is the biggest crowd ever. And it's like, no, it's not. It's clearly not the biggest crowd. In fact, it's not even the biggest crowd in this state in this year. Here was a football game that I could point to that had a bigger crowd. It's not even the biggest political crowd ever. Here's a political crowd, right? But it's a huge crowd, right? And so you could say,
Right.
well, I find that to be an unconscionable lie. But that lie's similar to me that when my dad goes fishing, he goes, holy shit, Rob, you should see the size of this fish I caught. It had to be 33 inches. And then when they measure it and they show me a picture, it's like, well, it was 26 inches. It's like, well, it's still a big trout, but you exaggerated. Is that lie as egregious of a lie as if you like your insurance, you could keep it? Or that Trump said Nazis are good people? Or that actually we are for securing the border? Which lies are more significant?
So the thing is, on the positional changes with Harris, I generally agree, just with the record, but my dad will say things like, well, people change their positions.
That's true.
And he'll just believe it. Like, he'll believe that she's 100% changed all her positions.
But why would he give her that benefit of the doubt and not Trump then?
Probably because there's no Harris. I don't know. But when I bring up, like, anytime I bring up here's this thing about Harris showing, like, a big lie she did, or how she swapped a position, or how she was arresting black people in California for smoking weed while she did it.
Mm-hmm.
He'll just say, oh, that's out of context. Or, like, whatever.
But
I don't know how to reason with it at this point.
It's very difficult, right? The thing is, there's two things Trump has going against him. He is objectionably unlikable for certain types of people. Right? For example, I'll tell you, one of the people in my wife's family is a diehard Catholic, diehard Republican. They won't vote for Trump because they find him to be a very crude man. He's foul-mouthed. He hangs around with strippers. He probably cheated on his wife with a porn star. It does not matter. I could say to them, what's your biggest issue? Oh, my biggest issue is abortion. Well, Trump appointed conservative judges that got Roe v. Wade overturned. And if Kamala Harris wins, there's a solid chance that she'll get to appoint 2 Supreme Court justices. This would basically enshrine abortion, which means dead babies. You're willing to accept dead babies because you think Trump's foul-mouthed? Yes. Yes, he is. It's hard to reach that person. It's hard. Those people that are so emotional about like characteristics that they're not going to look at the policies, it's very difficult. It's hard to have a sobering conversation with them and be like, but listen, I think maybe you're placing too much emphasis on the personal character flaws, of which there are many. Not only, and I don't say this as someone who's above the fray. I myself have many personal character flaws. You probably have many personal character flaws.
Actually, I watched Destiny for a while, and so that
there you go. So you have a huge character flaw. Right. So, I mean, it's certainly true that you could point the finger at anyone for character flaws. I personally think that the direction the country's going and the policies would be more important, but to each their own. The other thing is, there is a massive institution bias against Trump. And so the stories you hear that are amplified of Trump oftentimes would be directionally true for almost every person in the national spotlight for politics or as far as being a businessman, etc., such as infidelities. Like, for example, we know that there's a congressional slush fund that's paid off with your tax dollars, untold amounts of sexual harassment charges against members of Congress. We'll never know who those people were, but I'm sure it's people of the Republican and Democratic Party, and probably people that your father and you and me have supported that are included in that. Okay, we just don't have institutions that are out to get those people. So they're not going to run 24/7 attacks where the FBI is spying on them and it's being leaked to the press, and the press is going with any rumor. The same sorts of attacks that come on Donald Trump were the attacks we saw on someone like Brett Kavanaugh, who, again, your father, if he's a Republican or traditionally moderately conservative, probably would have thought Kavanaugh looked like a decent family man. He thought
all the Kavanaugh stuff was bullshit.
Right, but not the Trump stuff.
Not the Trump stuff.
I wonder why. It's because the Trump stuff's been more insidious and more long-term. And Trump's also... There's certain stuff about Trump you can't deny. We don't see pictures of Brett Kavanaugh hobnobbing it with Playboy Playmates or, and that's certainly true. So you have to ask yourself those sorts of questions. When it comes to the issue of lying, again, I think there are different types of lies, and Trump's saying, no one respects women more than me. I had the greatest economy ever. Like, he says these sort of stuff, and it's always as someone who's sort of interested in the truth. I always kind of roll my eyes a little. For example, with the debate, he said, everyone, even left-wingers, left-wing lawyers, etc., wanted Roe v. Wade overturned. Well, that's not true. That's just not true, right? It's not. And now it is true that more people than you think, including even left-wing people that favor abortion, actually had a problem with Roe v. Wade. I believe even Ginsburg herself at one point said she thought that the original Roe v. Wade ruling was problematic, right? But the way Trump phrases it, it's technically untrue what he says. But those sorts of, and listen, I don't have a problem with criticizing Trump for exaggerations or for, things of that nature like that. But you have to ask yourself, if it's a binary choice, Trump or the other side, what have the lies they've been told? They told us that the economy was great. They told us that the border was secure. They told us that Trump said Nazis were fine people. They told us that Trump told people to drink bleach. They told us that we had to lock down because of COVID, but racism was a bigger threat, so it was okay to go march for Black Lives Matter. They told us that the riots for Black Lives Matter was mostly peaceful. They told us that the war in Afghanistan was going great for 20 years, and then when the way we pulled out, it would be great, and the ANC or whatever, the Afghan army, would be able to withhold that. They told us that they didn't blow up the Nord Stream pipeline. They tell us that climate change is so bad that we basically have to gut the economy of the United States. Like, these lies are all far worse than Trump saying, oh, I have the greatest crowd side. I had the greatest economy. And as far as like Project 2025 and the things that are in it, what exactly is objectionable about Project 2025? Like, what would your dad be? That's the slogan that said, but
my dad has mixed feelings about 2025. He likes a lot of the economic policies,
Correct.
social policies. He doesn't like the stuff relating to replacing a lot of the staff with right-wingers and that sort of things. He sees it as like filling the cabinet with stooges.
Isn't that what the current situation is? For me, see, I'm voting for vastly... For vastly different reasons.
The institutions are all bipartisan.
Right.
I just don't know how to fight back. I'll link him stuff, and he'll be like, well, Trump lied, so of course they're going to call him out on the lie.
But
they have to write all these stories about Trump because he lies so much.
Try it this way. Show your dad the clip of Chuck Schumer saying in 2016, once Trump won the election, but before he got sworn in, Chuck Schumer goes on Rachel Maddow's show and says, Trump can't criticize the FBI because they'll find 6 ways a Sunday of getting back at him. In other words, what Chuck Schumer, the leader of the opposition party, just told the American people was, you can't criticize the FBI. That the leader of the executive, who is the head of the FBI, the boss of the FBI, the president, must be fearful of the FBI. Because if he challenges them, they will bury him, which is exactly what they did. By the way, that's the same way it would work at the IRS or the EPA or the State Department. That's what this bureaucracy is. That's what's really running the show. Just like right now, it's not Joe Biden running the show. He doesn't know where he's at half the time. And it won't be Kamala Harris running the show. She doesn't have the mental competence to run a local hamburger stand, let alone the most powerful country in the world. It's going to be these same people behind the scenes. Those people have a vested interest in not having someone come to power that's going to say, we don't like you. You're no longer going to be in power. They were fine with Mitt Romney. They're fine with Jeb Bush. They're fine with George Bush. They were fine with John McCain. They're fine with Hillary. They're fine with John Kerry. They're fine with Obama. They're fine with Biden and with Harris because they still maintain their power. But what they don't want is someone like a Trump, a Tulsi Gabbard, an RFK, and they didn't want Bernie Sanders in 2016 because they don't want someone that they feel will challenge the institutions. They don't want that. So is it any surprise? That's my thesis. That's what Chuck Schumer, I think, was telling everyone. And so just ask your dad this. If Chuck Schumer was right, if that was the system, that we had a bunch of institutions like the FBI that were like, we're running the show, and if the president challenges us, we'll bury him. What would that look like? Would it look like a bunch of people at those agencies coming out publicly against the president? Would it look like them leaking stuff to the press nonstop? Would it look like them illegally spying on a presidential campaign and then later presidential team? Would it look like the generals saying, we refuse to listen to these orders when you tell us to pull out of Syria? I think that's what it would look like, and that's exactly what's happened. So if my thesis is right, and these are a bunch of institutions that are really running things that don't want an outside power coming in and saying, nope, actually, the Constitution says I'm in charge of you, not the other way around, this is exactly how it would play out. Or it could be that the same institutions that saw all sorts of corruption during a Bill Clinton presidency, a George Bush presidency, an Obama presidency, and a Biden presidency, and did nothing, all of a sudden it was just that Trump was so bad that they all had to in unison speak out against him. So we had a bunch of people, for example, at the State Department that testified against Donald Trump in the first impeachment with Trump had a phone call to Zelensky, and that was worth impeaching. And they kept saying, oh, it was despicable. Trump kept going against our foreign policy. Wait a minute, we elected you to decide our foreign policy? That's news to me. I think you're just bureaucrats that are supposed to listen to the foreign policy of the elected leader of the country, who is Donald Trump. That's what I thought, but they kept saying, no, it was our foreign policy. And they found what Trump said on that phone call to be so objectionable. And yet, they basically didn't raise their voice to the national press when Joe Biden was the point person under Barack Obama to Ukraine, and his son was working for one of the very people that the State Department was saying was a Russian plant. And Zlochevsky, that ran Burisma. The vice president who's in charge of weeding out corruption in Ukraine, son goes to work making $80,000 a month for a corrupt pro-Russian oligarch. Why didn't the State Department leak to the press then? Where was their concern? Where were their calls for impeachment? And so I'm supposed to believe that, like, people like your father, what they have to believe is, no, it's just Trump is uniquely the worst dude that was ever president. He's just so much more corrupt than the rest of them that it just so happens that all these people, and that could theoretically be true. I just think that doesn't fit the pattern. It doesn't make sense when you look at things on a grander scheme.
I so want to get him on here with you, bro.
I would love to talk to him. And again, take the State Department specifically. If Trump was such a menace that, like, General Milley and General Mattis and people at the State Department came out, why was the world basically breaking out in peace for 4 years under Trump and now it's on fire? It's almost like those people that we task with being experts that, just let them run shit behind the scenes. We don't really know what goes into baking the cake. Trust us, they're doing a good job. And if they tell us that someone like Trump's doing a bad job, we have to listen. It's almost like they're full of shit. That's almost what it seems like. And so, for me, I find it interesting, and you could see this. There's this perception with people that you want to just say, shit's complicated. And the truth is, shit is complicated. I'm just some dumb redneck. I work 80 hours a week. I don't have time to sit down and look at the minutia of every specific foreign policy decision or every specific domestic economic position or campaign finance law, et cetera, et cetera. These are difficult things to get into, particularly if you're not a nerd like me. I find this stuff entertaining, but if you're a normal person, you probably have poker night with the friends or you enjoy going out with your family and shit. Not that I don't.
I'm a nerd. I did a whole doc on the response to Hurricane Helene.
Yeah,
with,
so
links to all the on-the-ground videos.
But we're outliers, right? I think most people aren't doing stuff like this. Most people aren't listening to some fat guy on a Friday night, talking politics and shit. So I think we're doesn't mean we're bad. I think we're great people. But I'm just saying that's not the norm. I understand that. And so it is true that it's like you have a default to trusting experts. Hasn't COVID taught us what that leads to? The blind faith in the expert? Because it turns out that science is good and expertise is good. And it is something that we should strive for, sort of the, understanding that there are certain people that know more than others and we should celebrate that. But humans are fallible. Humans are corruptible. Humans are biased. And science is interpreted through humans. Science is good. Scientists are humans that are trying to work through science. The same is true when it comes to other things, foreign policy, right? The process itself could be good, but you have to understand that the people that are involved with it, they have biases. They could be corruptible. And so when you have these institutions that have basically ran the show behind the scenes for decades, they don't want to give up that power. I hesitate to give advice, but one piece of advice I would give you possibly is, please, please, please do not leave your political differences and vote affect your relationship with your father.
It does not.
Yeah.